two lenses completely failed on the Blackmagic Pyxis 6K in my last test, and Blackmagic has quietly just dropped RC3 firmware. I wanted to share with you guys what's working and what's not working. I also tested 5 wireless microphones via USB-C on this camera and none of them work. So the question is this: is RC3 actually making this camera more usable, or are we still waiting? Quick note, before we go in, I am filming this episode on the Pyxis 6K itself using the Sirui 35mm f1.4, and I have got my S5 2X pointing at the Pyxis monitor, so you can actually see the autofocus working in real time as we go. This is the setup. Let's get into it. So if you're new here, this channel covers real world camera tests and not just spec sheets, so hit subscribe so you do not miss future videos like this and stuff related to filmmaking. Here's what we're covering today. First, I'll tell you whether RC3 fixed the 2 lenses that failed in my RC1 test. Then we'll go through the autofocus improvement, including what happens when your subject leaves the frame and the playback bug fix. And then we're going into USB-C audio, where I tested 5 different wireless microphones. I'll tell you exactly what happened. If you have not seen my RC1 lens test, I'll link in the description below. The short version is I ran 8 different lenses through the autofocus system, and most of them worked really well, but 2 failed completely. The Saramonic 24mm f1.8 and the Astrhori 85mm f1.8, and they did not just hunt. They stopped working entirely and the camera had to be switched off and turned back on. Now, RC3 is now adding flashy new headline features. What Blackmagic is doing here is refining how the autofocus actually behaves. 4 things specifically. 1, they fixed the bug where autofocus will stop working after you entered and exited playback mode. 2, they added the ability for the camera to find you again when you leave the frame and come back. 3, they worked on making face recognition more consistent. And 4, there are general stability improvement across the whole system. So let's see how all of that holds up. Alright, so the first thing I tested on RC3 was the TTartisan 24mm f1.8. It worked for a while, for about 2 seconds, then it stopped. The camera was showing face tracking on screen and I could see the box following me, but the lens was not actually pulling focus. I tried tapping and tried switching focus modes and nothing happened. Then I swapped to the Astrhori 85mm f1.8 without turning the camera off, and the same thing happened. You can see how they're almost like the same bodies. The face tracking box was on screen, but there was no actual focus movement. So both lenses failed again on RC3. But here's something important. When I then swapped back to the Sirui 35mm f1.4 to check if the camera was still working, the Sirui would not pick up autofocus either, and the camera needed a full restart before it would recognize a lens it had been working with perfectly before. So the issue with these 2 lenses is not just about compatibility. Something in how they talk to the system or the camera is causing a wider problem, and I really hope Blackmagic sees this video because these are lenses people are actually using on the Pyxis 6K. Now let's talk about what happens when you leave the frame. I walked out of shot completely and then walked back in, and the camera picked me up clean. It found me straight away, and this might sound like a small thing, but it's not. If you're shooting solo or working on a gimbal or doing documentary work where your subject moves around and then the old behavior meant losing focus and getting stuck. Now, the camera is trying to find you again automatically, and that is a genuinely useful improvement for real world shooting. It's one of those things you would not appreciate until you are in a shoot and it saves you. The next thing now is the playback bug fixed. Before RC3 here is what will happen. You finish the take and go into playback to review your footage and then exit playback, and the camera would just freeze. Autofocus gone. You would have to power the camera off and wait and turn it back on and then start again. On a shoot that costs you time and takes. RC3 fixes this. You exit playback and autofocus comes back. Now what I'm going to do, I can control my Pyxis 6K using my iPhone here, and if you see the red light, it means it's recording. There's a small red thing here where you press to record, and what I'll do is, since I'm recording with the S5 2X here, I will stop recording. So the Pyxis are stopped, and I'll hit playback, and it's gone into playback. It's gone into play mode. I'll wait for it to load. That's loaded up, and I'll click play from my phone, and you can see I'm playing back the last clip that was done. And if I hit record on my phone again, the camera will switch out from the playback mode if I hit record, it begins to record. So that works very, very fine. That bug is gone. And you can see the RC3 fixed the bug when you go into playback. Now to face recognition, now Blackmagic said this was improved in RC3. And I have seen some improvement, but I also noticed that the system will sometimes think something I am holding is a face. So there is still some work to be done there. It is better than it was, but not where it needs to be yet. Blackmagic, I hope you're watching because this needs another pass. Now to USB-C audio, I've tested 5 wireless microphone systems on this camera, the Røde Wireless Pro and the Røde Wireless Micro and the DJI Mic Mini and the Hollyland Lark M2S and even the Saramonic Ultra. I also tested the Comica VM40, which is a wireless 32-bit shotgun mic that connects via its receiver to its receiver and then via USB-C. None of them worked. Not one wireless receiver connected via USB-C gave me audio into the Pyxis 6K. The camera recognized that something was plugged in, but no signal came through. The only thing that worked was the Rode PodMic running through my RødeCaster Pro 2, which is a proper USB audio mixer. So what this tells you is that the Pyxis 6K USB-C audio input right now needs a device that outputs a proper USB audio signal, and a wireless receiver dongle, even from major brands, is not doing that. Now, I do not know yet if this is something Firmware can fix or if it is a deeper limitation. But if you've got this working with the wireless mic via USB-C, please tell me what you are using in the comments below. I've seen a post on Facebook or in the Blackmagic Pyxis Facebook group that said the NTG, I think 4, worked with the Pyxis 6K via USB-C. Where does the RC3 firmware leave the Pyxis 6K as a tool right now? Would I use this autofocus on a professional shoot? Yes, and with one caveat. Interviews and podcasts and talking heads and any situation where the subject is relatively in one place on L-mount native glass, this system is quick and it is getting more consistent. I am happy using it. The Sirui RR35 and the TTartisan 75mm and even the Sigma 16-28 and the Sigma 28-105 and even my Canon 50mm EF 1.4 using a Sigma MC21 adapter have all been solid. But if your workflow depends on third-party lenses that are not officially supported, then test before you commit. The TTartisan and the Astrhori failures are a reminder that your autofocus experience right now is very much tied to which lenses you're using. L-mount native is where this system performs best, and EF via the MC21 adapter worked in RC1. And I expect that to continue, but I have not yet retested it yet on RC3. Blackmagic is not just adding autofocus anymore, they are making it better shoot by shoot and update by update. And RC3 is evidence of that, but there is still work to do and I will keep testing every update as it comes. That's the RC3 update on the Blackmagic Pyxis 6K covering autofocus and less compatibility. So that's it for the RC3 update on the Blackmagic Pyxis 6K covering autofocus and lens compatibility and USB-C audio. If this video helped you, then please hit like and subscribe because I'll be covering every major firmware update as Blackmagic drops them. The full RC1 lens test is linked in the description below if you want the complete picture. And if you're thinking about the Pyxis 6K and want to know how it handles in real world shooting, then check out this video right here. It's a filmmaker. Thanks for watching. God bless and peace.